Welcome back to the AI and Ethics podcast. Today's episode is about one of the most important questions of our time. How do we build AI that helps humans instead of replacing the human side of our world? My guest today is Sandy Carter, a globally recognized technology executive, author, and thought leader at the intersection of AI, blockchain, Web3, and digital identity. Sandy has led and scaled multi-billion-dollar businesses at AWS and IBM, served in senior leadership roles across global technology organizations, and is a respected voice in the future of artificial intelligence. She is a Forbes contributor, a global keynote speaker who has presented at Davos, CES, SXSW, reInvent, and the United Nations, and is the best-selling author of AI First, Human Always. She is also the founder of Unstoppable Woman of AI, helping advance women's leadership in emerging technology worldwide. What makes Sandy's work so important in her core belief is AI should be built to amplify human potential, with people always at the center. Sandy, welcome to the podcast. It is a real pleasure to have you here.
Oh, it's such an honor to be here and talking about one of my favorite topics, which is how to use AI responsibly, for sure.
I'm excited about this conversation because your career connects AI, leadership, blockchain, digital identity, and ethics. But most importantly, it keeps coming back to one powerful idea. Technology should serve people. So I'd love to begin with your journey and your perspective. Sandy, you have led major technology initiatives across IBM, AWS, and now Unstoppable Domains. When you look back, what thread connects all the chapters of your career?
I think the biggest thing that connects everything, and now I'm in my fourth career change. I'm now the CEO of an agentic AI company. So I've moved on from Unstoppable to agentic AI. But I think it's really always about taking emerging tech and figuring out how to leverage emerging tech to drive business value, not just to do it because it's cool, but to do it because it really has an impact on your business. So, for example, when we were looking at cloud, we could talk about cutting costs, making sure that you were most effective or most efficient. When we were looking at VR, we were looking at how do you best create that customer experience, or even blockchain, how to keep your data so protected. And now with agentic, how to make sure that you're leveraging your people the best and supplementing them with AI plus that human skill, which I think means the best results in a business.
You have been at the center of several major technology shifts: AI, cloud, AI, yacht, Web3, and digital identity. Which shift felt the most transformational while you were living through it?
I think the biggest one by far is happening right now with AI. There's just no question. Like cloud was a big shift, but it was more of a shift for the technologist. Mobile was a shift in the way that we interacted with the technology. But AI right now is changing people's lives. It's changing businesses. It's changing workflows. It's looking and adjusting at different roles that people have. It's just an all-encompassing change. And I think that this right now that we're going through is a once in a lifetime change that we're seeing and experiencing today.
And that's why you were one of my first, let's say, people who motivated me for creating this podcast. And thank you very much for your energy, for your motivation, and for your support, for always all the people near you. Thanks. Now, thank you, Sandy. Many people know you as a technology executive, but also as an author and advocate. How do you personally define your mission today?
I think my mission today has three elements to it. One obviously is to grow our business that we have around agentic AI and privacy. That's the new company that I work for, making sure that we're educating people about the data and how important that data is, especially about us in particular. I think my second mission is really around education. As I explore a lot of these new trends, I'm finding that people don't understand them well enough. So, for example, I'm out here in Arizona and I just did a presentation to a group of veterinarian vets. Like vets need to know about this. So, making sure that the technology is accessible to everybody, not just a few, but to everybody. And that's why I write books like, AI First. I was just looking to see if I could grab my book over here. Sorry for the awkward pose, but I've got my
Yes,
book
thank you
here.
very much.
AI First, Human Always. That's why I write books. That's why I write blogs. That's why I go on podcasts like this, is really to help educate people. And
Yes,
then I think the third one for right now, my focus is making sure that humans stay at the top. Everybody right now is talking about technology, technology, technology. But we know from all these reports that are out there, the BCG one that just came in, technology is only 30% of your success rate, only 30%. So what's the other 70? It's people, process, and culture. So I just want to keep raising up this human element that is going to be so important for all of our success.
and that's why it's very important for me today to have you here, because you are one of the most powerful advocates of this important point, or where we are discussing now in, let's say, all new reality related to artificial intelligence. Now, you have worked inside some of the world's largest tech organizations and now in the Web3 space. What do startups understand about innovation that big companies often miss? What do you think?
Hmm. Well, I'm no longer in Web3, but I still continue to do AI and blockchain. But it's really interesting. The reason I have flip-flopped throughout my career, I go to a big company and then I had my startup. And then I went to a big company and then I did a startup. Then I went to a big company and I do a startup. And I think that you learn different things at big companies than you do startups. And you learn different things at startups that you don't at big companies. So the benefit of a big company is you've got a big team. You have people you can bounce ideas off of and test different theories. You've got resources because you can make things happen. But typically, you don't own the full thing. And typically, bigger companies move slower. At a startup, you're doing everything. You're like able to put your finger in lots of different pies. So it's great for learning. You can move super fast, which is very important, especially during today's age. But you don't have the same level of resources. And a lot of times, being a startup, especially as the CEO, can be quite lonely. Like, who do you bounce ideas off of, right? I've joined a couple of CEO roundtables just so I can have that ability to bounce ideas off of people like I love to do or have loved to do at bigger companies. And so I think different companies are great for learning different things. And I think the powerhouse would be to create something like Amazon did. When I came into Amazon, they talked about it being the world's largest startup. We had these little 2-pizza teams and we were able to move really quick. We had resources and we just went after the target. And so I think that's the best of all worlds, but you don't get that very often. And even now, AWS has changed somewhat in that thrust as well.
Thank you. Very interesting answer, and the answer we need to hear, because you have both experiences. So you are the best person to share with us and with all the people, that all the public is listening this podcast, these very interesting experiences, and what both of these experiences, which advantages and disadvantages have both of them. Thanks, Sandy. Your work has always been connected to transformation, not only technological transformation, but also business and human transformation. And that brings me to your latest book, AI First, Human Always, which feels very connected to the moment we are living in right now. Yes, I
Yes.
love your book and your great idea. AI is everywhere. And by the way, we recommend to our listeners that is really one of the most important issues we are living now. So I recommend to read it and to share it with all the community because it's an important issue. Uh, AI is everywhere. Companies want to move faster. People are excited, but also afraid. And many leaders are still trying to understand how to adapt AI without losing the human element. So let's talk about that. Your latest book is titled AI First, Human Always. What does that phrase mean to you in practical terms?
Well, it was really interesting because this is my second book on artificial intelligence. I wrote one earlier just to really explain the basic concepts, what it was, and kind of the history. You know, AI really started with some of the things that IBM had done way back in the day. And so as I was writing it, this second book was really about how do companies approach AI? What were the things that made people successful in deploying AI? So I did a survey with about 400 different companies, and then talked to a bunch of them in person. And I found that there were three things that kept coming up over and over and over again: change management, which involves people; business outcomes, which involves people setting the business outcome; and data. And so that would say 2/3 of what you're doing is built on people. So when I wrote the book, I didn't have all these great studies from McKinsey and BCG that showed that about 70% was based on people and processes. And so as I was writing the book, I really focused on not just the technology, but the people who make the technology powerful. And so when I came up with my title, AI First, Human Always, I came up with that because AI right now is top of mind for people. It is first. But you got to remember that humans are going to always be there. I believe, always believe they're adding value, adding power, doing that safety check. I think humans will always be involved and important. And that's why I said humans always. AI may be first, but humans will be always present, omnipresent. And Najada, I fought hard to get this title. Many people at the publisher I was at did not like this title. They wanted wanted me to remove humans from it, and I wouldn't do it. And so now, looking back, I'm super excited that I was able to keep this particular title because it really, in my mind, it really drives home the most important things about this moment.
And thanks, we have people like you that I said before too that advocate for this very important issue in today's reality. And I think that artificial intelligence then will be, let's say, used in a more responsible way and AI first, but human always. There is a lot of fear around AI replacing human work. In your view, what should leaders be saying instead?
Well, the first thing I think leaders need to be doing is involving themselves in AI. A lot of leaders will say the words and then they'll ask everybody else to go do AI and they don't. And the studies show that leaders who get their hands dirty, I name this play storming, which is not just thinking about it or saying it, but actually doing it, are the leaders that are most successful. In fact, the latest SAP study showed that if leaders are actually involved in getting their hands dirty, companies will be 5x more successful, 5x more successful if leaders are actually doing it. The second thing that I think is really, really important is developing trust and inclusion of people. When I've worked with companies to redesign org charts or to add agents into what companies are doing, I always advise, let's bring the team together. Let's brainstorm together. Let's make sure everybody's working on this in sync. And I think that's really important that everybody work together and that there's trust. Trust is really important. And today there is a 4x trust gap between leaders and employees of why leaders want to do this. And I think the third one is enablement. I know that's like an old-timey word, but a lot of people today are giving up on their tools. Over 54% of people start using corporate tools and then they just say, I can't use it, I give up. Some of that is training, getting skills in place. Some of that is the tools have been selected that aren't the right fit. And some of it is just setting expectations across an organization, because these tools impact a workflow. And typically a workflow isn't just about one person. The work flows throughout an organization. And so I think the best companies will be focused and honing in on those things and not on, oh, AI is going to replace my job, but here's how AI can help us. Here's how we leaders are using it. Here's how we think it can flow throughout the organization. And here I'm going to train you on it so you don't feel like you're just left out on your own.
We are discussing about organizations. So in the book, you focus on putting AI first without losing the human element. Where do you see companies getting that balance wrong today?
Well, I think a lot of companies and a lot of people that I talk to in private rooms feel like AI is about eliminating jobs. And I think that is not a good message, not a good message. And I think it's incorrectly using AI. If you look at what Aaron Levy is doing at Box, he's adding new and different roles. If you look at IKEA, IKEA had AI automate stuff, and what they did was they moved those people to higher value roles in the company. They found there was a gap in designing projects, and they're increasing revenue by doing that. And this weekend, we just read about a company who was doing safety checks with AI, and they hadn't really done the end-to-end check on it. And now they're moving back to having humans do that particular role. And so I don't think that people should be so focused on AI is about cost cutting, like we were with a cloud. Cloud is going to cut costs because we're now using the cloud and not all these single standalone servers. To me, I think that's where the focus needs to be, is how can we elevate many tasks that we haven't been able to do before, because now we have AI who can automate several of these things for us.
What is one example of AI being used in a way that is truly human-centered, not just efficiency-centered?
Oh, wow. There's so many examples. I'm working with one healthcare company who has a marketing team, and they're growing like crazy, but they're not going to hire more people at this time because of their cost structure. And so what the team did was they got together and they said, okay, if we could hire people, like what would they do? And they said, oh, they would do campaign analysis and marketing. They might do landing page optimization. They might do market research. And so what they did was they built agents to do those roles, and they included them as part of the team. And I think that has a lot of good lessons. One, they got together with the team to come up with the ideas. Two, they're using AI to supplement what humans do. And three, as they're doing that, they're redesigning their workflows. And so they're going to be much more efficient and effective as a result. So for me, that is an example of a great way to use and leverage artificial intelligence.
I found this very interesting, and in different discussions, I always have said this. It's better, in my opinion, artificial intelligence not, let's say, be not human, but the humans will need to be more professional to use it. So we need more professionals, not We do not need humans, in my opinion. How should organizations prepare their employees for AI adoption without creating fear, resistance, or confusion?
Well, I love the way that Mass General did it. They set up a promptathon and they got everybody in the hospital. Mass General, if you don't know, if you're not from the US, is one of the best and most successful hospitals in the world for treating patients. And so what they did was they had everybody come together to do a promptathon to learn together. Again, they're getting the top leaders, having the teams explain what they were trying to do and have a realistic view of it, but at the same time embedding training. And so I love this. I just was at a agent-a-thon where people were developing agents for the company. I think that's a great way to get started and to use it. NTT Data is another one I think that has a great idea. What they've done is they've got like the black belt system, right? So if you're going for karate, you get a white belt, a yellow belt, a red belt, and you earn up to a black belt. And so what they're doing is they've got this very structured way to train people on AI. And you have to have like the yellow belt to get certain tools and the brown belt to get other tools. It's a really creative way to make people want to be at a higher level and to get them trained at the same time.
If a CEO of a corporate or company is listening now to us and wants to become AI first, what are the first 3 steps they should take?
So if somebody wants to be AI first, unfortunately or fortunately, they need to start with their leadership team. So to be AI first, you need to be human always. So you need to start with your leadership team and really do an assessment of their skill level. How do you get them trained up? And what are the goals for the company overall that you want to use or leverage AI for? I find a lot of companies just want to be like, oh, let's use AI, let's do AI, versus focusing on the business outcome they're looking for, that first principle. And then kind of saying, okay, if this is what we want to accomplish, AI could help us here and here and here. Versus let's do an AI project. Oh, where's the problem that we can use for that AI project? I think that's number one. Number two, I think they need to do solid enablement with their teams. Make sure their teams understand why they're going to use AI, how to use AI, and even have like lunch and learn so the team can share their learning. And then the third thing I think they need to do is have metrics in place. Not just tech metrics, right? Oh, we rolled Claude out to 100 employees, but we wanted to use Claude to make ourselves better at code documentation. How are you going to measure that? And can we see the results? Oh, we wanted to experiment with Claude in, maybe doing optimization for SEO. Well, how are we going to measure that so that they can watch and see? In my mind, those would be the top 3 things that I would do. In the book, I do have a little framework that you can use and leverage as well to determine if you're AI first or not yet.
What skills matter most in an AI first world, especially for young professionals entering the workforce now?
It's so funny because I just did a session at Columbia University. And it was really fascinating listening to the next generation talk about artificial intelligence. Of course, they're scared, right? Is AI going to take my job? And their big question for me was, Sandy, what skill set do I need so I can be successful in the future? And I think it comes down to a couple of things. One, I think it's about how you solve problems. Don't delegate your thinking to AI. Think about how you approach a problem, how you solve a problem. And is that something that you can brainstorm with AI to make your ideas stronger, but not outsourcing it? One young lady was telling me a story where she had to do an interview like we're doing. And she said it was going to be in person. And so she was panicked because she said, I wouldn't have AI with me. I couldn't go to Chat GPT and Claude. And then she said, I calmed down and I was like, wow, I'm depending too much of my thinking on these AI tools. I need to back away. And it's caused her to approach this differently. I think the second thing is making sure you have a strong domain expertise. And when I say domain, I mean something that you're really good at. It may be in marketing, it may be developing sales leads, it may be coding or documenting, it may be, finance, but develop that depth of skill because that will keep you, I think, top of the chart for quite a while. And then the third thing is EQ. We've been talking about EQ for a while. And I think that having EQ so that you can help your teammates and that you can help your company on the people side will continue to be very, 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 very strong.
One thing I really like about this conversation is that we are not only talking about AI as an idea. You have seen emerging technologies move from hype into real enterprise adoption. You have worked with major organizations, large teams, and global businesses. You have seen what works, what fails, and what companies often misunderstand when they try to innovate. So I want to go deeper into leadership, enterprise AI, and what it really takes to turn technology into business value. At IBM, you helped bring the Watson AI ecosystem into the enterprise. What did that experience teach you about turning emerging technology into real business value?
Oh, wow, so much. One is that we were super early in the market. And when you're super early with the concept, you have to pause and educate the market. So we had just said, oh, this is super cool. This is great. We lived it and breathed it. We were in Silicon Valley. Everybody's doing it. And then we went out in the real world and we're like, wow, we've got to pause and educate people on it. I think the second thing that I learned was the translation between the business and the technology. I think the most valuable leaders move between understanding what the technology can do and what the business needs are. So back to that, first principles, they need to make sure that they understand the technical and the business side. So for example, maybe they don't have to write the code, but they need enough technical literacy to call BS on hype, and to make those decisions. And I also think, as I was doing and leveraging Watson, we decided to do things that I thought were really interesting. So we did an AI generated cookbook. We would have a food trip come and we would have AI generate the recipes. And that would give us a real personal way to explain the power of the AI, backing up and figuring that out. So AI moves fast. Even back then, it moved fast, right? Outcomes are probabilistic, they're not deterministic. So I think that one of the things I got good at with Watson was making decisions with incomplete information, designing systems that failed gracefully, knowing when to ship versus when to hold. I think that would be really important. And then the other thing I learned is trust and alignment of people. We when we built out the ecosystem, we had to learn about different business models to try. So we tested out a few of them. And in order to do that and then maybe change our minds, it was important to make sure that you were able to develop that trust and align people so you could set an honest expectation and then create accountability as well.
Thank you. Very interesting experiences, and thanks for sharing with us. Enterprise leaders often say they want innovation, but they are also risk averse. How do you help organizations move faster without being reckless?
Mm. Well, I mean, I think a lot of this comes back to a lot of the recklessness is focusing solely on the technology. I can't tell you how many companies come to me and they're like, Sandy, we've heard you talk about AI. We have to do an AI project versus our business has this need and we need to apply it to that need. For me, that's one of the biggest things that can make a difference in terms of your speed. If you're going at a business outcome, you can definitely go faster. If you're just working on the technology, you're not going to be able to innovate as fast. And I always use this example. There's a company in Malaysia. The founder of the company was amazing. It was a manufacturing company. He had great intentions. He wanted his teams to be the most comfortable they could be, the most productive they could be. And so he came up with this idea to do mood jackets, like a mood ring that would measure, are they too hot, too cold? Do they need music to spice it up? Do they need more breaks? What happens? But they spent 9 months on that tech innovation, developing the jacket, making sure that it had IoT and the AI in it, making sure the data was anonymous. And then they only took about a week to explain to their teams what they were doing and why. And as a result, the first time out, it completely failed because people were not trusting of what they were using. They didn't know how it was going to be used or why it was going to be used. And so I do think that people can get high innovation if they include their people early on, not wait till the very end.
What separates companies that successfully adopt AI from those that only experiment with it?
I think there were three things that came up from my study. One was they don't do good change management, so they don't bring their people in early on. Two, they only focus on the technology. They don't focus on the people or the business side. And three, they don't focus on having the right data because, AI just eats up data. That's what it feeds on. And if you don't have the right data, you're going to be unsuccessful. So my big story I use here is at IBM. We trained Watson on a 33,000 romance novels. So that was all it was trained on, just romance novels. And then we showed a picture of two sumo wrestlers that were going for the world championship. And we asked Watson to write a caption for that particular scene of two sumo wrestling. And of course it got it wrong. Why? Because the data was wrong. And that's just the same way with enterprises. If you don't have the right data, if you don't have strong data, you're not going to get to the right answer.
So, Sandy, how do you explain Web3 identity to someone who doesn't follow crypto or blockchain closely?
Yeah, it's really not about Web3 identity. It's really about an identity that you own and keep forever. So I wouldn't even bother someone with Web3, et cetera. Just say it's your identity. And what does identity mean? It's just a way to identify who you are in a safe and a protected way. Just like when you go to a bank, you have to show them ID. It's very similar online. This enables you to identify yourself through certain elements. And so I think identity is really important. There's elements about credentialing in identity, which means that, for example, I could prove I was 21 years old without revealing my birthday, without revealing my address, which I can't do in the real world. Because if I give someone my license, they have access to lots of other things about me. And so there's a real powerful element to a digital identity.
We are moving into a world where AI agents, digital wallets, avatars, and online credentials may all represent us. What should people understand about owning their digital identity before it's too late?
Well, I think what's really important about a digital identity is having something that you can trust. We call it almost like a Better Business Bureau here in the States of something that is real and true. So, for example, it could be a Better Business Bureau for your school, could be the actual school that can verify that you actually went to that school. For age, it could be the group that issues birth certificates. And so what you're looking for is you're looking for an issuer of the credential who has the standing to provide that information, not just a mom and pop shop, right? Because if I said, "Oh, Najada, can you verify that I went to Harvard?" and you say yes, and I use your verification, it won't be as strong as if I used my actual school's verification.
And now, Sandy, our last question. You have written books, built businesses, served on boards, and advocated for women in technology. When people look back at your work 10 or 20 years from now, what impact do you hope they remember most?
I hope that they remember that I helped them in some way. I was able to answer a question for them, I do an introduction for them. I would hope that they remember that I would treat them with kindness. You know, there's a favorite quote of mine that says, "You don't remember a lot of times what you talk to someone about, but you always remember how they made you feel." And I hope that is really positive. It's really interesting, Najada, that you asked me this question because I've just lost Joss Bear, who was the founder of Capital Factory, who started Gig'em. He just passed away. And the co-founder of Unicloth also just passed away. So it's caused me to really think about, what do I want to be remembered for? Especially as I'm reading notes upon notes for all three of those guys. And every single note, none of it says, "Oh, wow, Josh was a great keynote speaker. Wow, this person was a VP or this person was a CEO." It was always, "Oh, I reached out to him and he helped me do this. I reached out to her and she helped me do this." And so that's what I really want my impact to be, more of the human impact than the business impact.
Thank you very much, Sandy. This has been such a powerful and meaningful conversation. What I'm taking away from today is that AI is not just about systems, speed, or automation. It is about people. It is about how we lead, how we build trust, how we protect identity, and how we make sure technology expands human potential instead of reducing it. Your idea of AI first, human always is such an important message for this moment. As AI becomes part of every industry and every part of our lives, we need leaders, builders, and communities who remember that innovation should serve humanity. I also really appreciate how your work connects so many important pieces of the future: AI, digital identity, Web3, leadership, ethics, and inclusion. It reminds us that the future of technology is not something that simply happens to us. It is something we choose, design, and shape together. Sandy, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your experience, your insights, and your vision for a more human-centered digital future. And to everyone who listens, thank you for joining us on the AI and Ethics podcast. If this episode made you think differently about AI, leadership, or the future of technology, please share it with someone who would find it valuable. And don't forget to follow the podcast for more conversations about how we can build technology that is not only powerful, but responsible, ethical, and human. Thank you very much, Sandy.
And Jonna, thank you for having me on your show, and good luck in everything. I really appreciate it.